Did you know that only 0.01% of the population is actually capable of squatting 4 plates? That's 405 pounds or 180 kilos. So can the average guy eventually pull this off, and why is it so rare? Let's find out. What is up, my guy? Fuck. What is up, guys? Vas here. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're actually going to talk about why a 4-plate squat seems to be so rare among gym goers. And if you stick until the end of the video, I'm actually going to share with you my tips and tricks of how I managed to hit 4 plates, 4 reps within just my first 2 years of training. Stick around to find out. I'm actually willing to bet that not that many people have heard about this, but we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully there will be some people in the comments letting us know. As always, if you do have any tips, tricks, or advice for the rest of us, do share those in the comments. They do help the channel, but they do help the people who watch the video as well. Always share those things in the comments so we can all collectively get stronger and bigger together. So why is a 4-plate squat such a rare occurrence? For the record, I have probably seen 2 people do it in the 6 years of training in public gyms. It's a rare thing, you don't often see it. Well, this type of lifts is what we call a compound movement, and that's because we use more than just one muscle group to perform the movement. The opposite will be an isolation movement, so when you perform, for example, a bicep curl on the preacher, the only muscles that move the weight are your biceps, whereas with squats and most compound lifts, it will actually be easier to list the number of muscles that don't help with the movement. Unlike isolation movements, compound lifts do require a certain degree of skill and coordination between different parts of your body, which means that you can't really brute force your way through a squat. Pure strength is unfortunately not gonna cut it. The other major aspect to compound lifts is that they require a certain degree of dexterity as well and nervous system activation. I'm sure a lot of you know this, but for those of you who don't, essentially our brain sends signals through our nervous system down to our body, and these signals command certain motor units to do a certain type of movement. The brain is like a computer. If you want to get the most out of your muscles, you also need to calibrate and upgrade the software on that computer, aka your brain. The brain seems to be very, very similar to what an ECU is to a car's engine. Your engine might be capable of producing a lot more horsepower and torque, but the ECU will actually limit an engine's performance for various reasons. But your brain is no different to what an ECU does to an engine's car, and ultimately these things, the brain and the ECU, will determine the performance of the car or your bodies. Which finally brings me to my first point, and that is consistency. Unlike a car, which you can bring to a specialist and he can tune the ECU, getting you instant power gains, our brain and body is not exactly the same, unfortunately. We require a lot more time and a lot more repetitions to actually get a skill down and improve the mind-muscle connection of our bodies. This isn't something that happens overnight, and in most instances it takes months, several months, to a couple of years, if not more. Which is why a lot of people can't actually squat 4 plates. They don't train consistently and long enough to be able to maximize that mind-muscle connection, get those bigger muscles, that big foundation which will actually help you move the weight. I had people in the past come up to me and ask me, how can I bench as much as you, or how can I squat as much as you? And my usual question back to them is, well, for how long have you been training for? And in my mind, I mean consistently. And usually they will say, well, it's my first 6 months in the gym, or I've been only in the gym for a couple of years and I didn't take this very seriously in the beginning. You know where I'm going with this. Guys, if there was a way for me to use words and make you a better and stronger lifter, training would then be pointless. It takes time. You just need to keep training week after week. Do not skip training days. Keep hammering at it, and you need to be obsessed with progressively overloading. You need to be obsessed with progress. You have to not be happy with where you are at the moment if you wish to progress. And trust me, if you're not happy with your current lifts, if you're not happy with the way you look, if you keep hammering at the problem, eventually you are going to find a way out of it. The other thing which actually came up quite a lot on my previous video on benching 315 is unrealistic expectations. The fitness industry has set completely and utterly unrealistic expectations on people. The algorithm will push the most insane cases, the typical I just benched 4 plates at 17 years of age, and you're like, what? How? Obviously, what they won't say is that these people use a ton of performance enhancing drugs, also known as anabolics, also known as steroids. And more often than not, they will never show you the negative side effects of these drugs. They will just show you the good stuff, which is the big lifts and the great physiques, but not the negative side effects. And most of them you won't see until years later when you realize the damage, the true damage that you have done to your body just so you can bench 4 plates. Is it worth it? In my opinion, it doesn't, and that's why I've stayed natural for that many years, and I really don't plan on hopping on anything. Perhaps when I'm 50, I might get on testosterone replacement therapy, but that's a different conversation entirely. I'm not talking about taking gear so I can lift more. I'm talking about getting gear when my natural testosterone falls so much that my way of life is going to be affected by it. Different conversation, maybe for another time. Also, what you need to keep in mind is that yes, these people are on a lot of steroids, they are on a lot of PEDs, and yes, they have serious side effects. But what you should also consider is that these people, the most insane cases that you see online, besides the drugs, they're also genetically gifted. So you can be genetically gifted in many ways. It's not necessarily just about how you look. So muscle bellies, where muscles actually attached to your body, that's genetics, and that's on the look side. The other side is muscle leverages and how strong you can be, but also how well you respond to said drugs is also genetics. So there's actually two major components. You have the gear, which obviously helps you lift a lot of weight, but the better your response, the more of a freak case you're going to be, right? So you need to keep that in mind. These people are also blessed genetically. Which very conveniently brings me to my last point, which is genetics. Genetics and starting physical point is something that we're going to have to talk about because they actually play a major role when it comes to big lifts. Just so I can give you an example, I'm 6'4", and at the time of this lift, which was about 3 years ago, I was 115 kilos, which is about 255 pounds. As you can see, I was by no means fat. I was nowhere even close to 24% body fat, which is kind of like the ceiling of, being healthy and getting to obese levels. But I'm just a big person. That's just the reality. I'm very tall and I also have an appetite, which means that I can put on weight. And mass moves mass. So my size will always naturally help me move more weight. Just to give you another example, I naturally have a big back, big wide back, which helps me a lot with benching. That's why I can pull this.
Three. You up? Up again.
That's because a big back is actually the secret on benching very heavy. It just helps you stabilize yourself against the bench, and if you're stable, you're actually able to produce more force. What I'm saying is that genetics and your physical starting point matters. Somebody who's 5'2" and 150 pounds will struggle way more to squat 4 plates than somebody who's 6'8" and naturally 260 pounds with abs. It's just kind of like how it happens. Mass moves mass. You can't get around that. People who are generally taller will be able to squat and lift heavier in general. It's not just about squats, it's about deadlifts, benching, shoulder presses, all that kind of stuff. Heavier people can move more weight. That's just how it works. Which also means that if you want to put a couple of extra pounds of not necessarily muscle, this will also help you to move more weight. And I mean, I'm talking about body fat here, right? If you want to put more weight on, if you want to eat your way to heavier lifts, you can't do it. I wouldn't advise it necessarily, but it's something that's on the table if you want to do it. Which also conveniently brings me to my next point, or my next question, really. So, what can you do to finally be able to squat 4 plates or see an increase on your squats? Well, going off the back of what we just discussed, the very first thing that you need to do is to remain consistent for long periods of time with your training, but also with your diet. You need to be obsessed with progressively overloading, with progress in general. You just need to be obsessed with these things. And if you want to get there quicker, you should consider training for strength specifically. So, following a 5x5 program or a powerlifting program, because these are tailored specifically for strength. And the only metric that matters is strength and not necessarily your size. Although you will get size off the back of that, but it's primarily your strength. So it's really just these two things, and the third one is optional, but you must remain consistent with your training and your diet, and you need to be obsessed with progress. Obsessed. I can't stress this enough. You need to be going back to the gym, and it needs to bother you that you can't lift 4 plates yet, and you want to push the needle. Not a lot, just slightly. And eventually you will get there. The other thing, if you want to do it quicker, you can follow the programs that we just talked about. But I did promise that I will share my secrets with you guys, my tips and tricks that I have been able to put together through all these years of training, and tell you how I actually got to squat 4 plates within just 2 years, and not any 2 years, within my first 2 years of training. So one of them is an advice that I got early on, and I'm very, very happy that I got it early on because it really does help across all your lifts, not just squats. And that is slow eccentrics. Now, science still debates whether a slow eccentric will promote more muscle. There's a lot of people who say that it doesn't. There's a lot of people who say that it does. I'm not an expert in this. I can't give any advice, and I'm not going to do it. What I am going to do is tell you what slow eccentrics did for me. Slowing down the eccentric phase, which is the phase that your muscles stretch. So on squats, when you go down, that's your eccentric phase, has helped me with mind-muscle connection a ton. The fact that you slow down a movement allows you to, in real time, be aware of what your body is doing. It allows you to fix certain mistakes that you're doing, certain imperfections with your technique. Put your feet closer together, wider, whatever helps. It just allows you to think that in real time so you get a clearer feedback, which is very, very important. And of course, off the back of that, we have to talk about this, especially if you are going to lift very heavy. Slowing down your stuff is safer, which means less injuries over the long term, which means you're going to be able to progress much faster. Because if you have to take a month off or 2 months off because you injured yourself seriously, well, then that's not going to help, is it? Slow down your stuff. I can't stress this enough. Slow down both phases. Do not rush. Make sure that you're aware of your technique at all times. Make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure your body understands you, or rather, your brain understands what your body is doing. And that's where the mind-muscle connection is going to naturally come from. The other thing that I'm going to say, this is what I don't think most of you know, because I don't really hear it, and I don't know why. This helped me so much when I was trying to squat heavy. Here's the advice. Load the bar with weight that you cannot yet squat. So if you can do 3 plates max, then put 3.5 plates aside. Simply unrack the bar, walk back, and just stay there with the bar on your shoulders. Can't stress this enough. Do not squat. Do not try to squat. Do not try to do half reps. None of that. Just stay there with the bar on your shoulders. It may sound easy. You may say, well, what's the point of this? Load the bar and you will see. Load the bar with weight that you can't yet handle and you will find out what I mean. Here's a video of me doing it. As you just saw, you can have the safety zone. It will make you feel a lot better. And this is kind of like the point of this. This is meant to give you the confidence of what the 4 plates actually look like, because there's going to be a first time, right? First time that you're going to squat 4 plates. So my idea was, why try to squat 4 plates without knowing how even unrocking the weight feels? That makes no sense. If I can prepare in a safe manner, why wouldn't I do it? So load the 4 plates, walk back. Trust me, it's gonna feel terrible. But what this will allow you to do is it will prepare you. You now know what this feels like. You're probably going to have to do this a couple of times too, but it will give you the confidence. So when you unrack the bar and you are going to squat it eventually, you're like, okay, we've been here before. And your brain is going to think the same. You're going to be like, okay, we've been here before. We know what this feels like, which is another thing. Your muscles are going to know what this feels like. This is super important. I remember this as if it was yesterday. When I did this for the first time, well, I mean, you could probably see on the video, I was shaking. Just the first couple of times, to be honest, I was just shaking throughout it. I was like, what the fuck is that? But eventually, what happens is your body gets used to the pressure magically, right? And I really do believe that this is the mind muscle connection that we talked about. This is your CNS, your nervous system, just being aware of what's happening and being more adapted to the heavy weights. And the other thing is you can actually regulate your breathing. So when you have a bunch of adrenaline and a bunch of heavy load on you and you try to move, there is going to be naturally a lot of adrenaline, so just rushing through your body, especially with weight that you've never moved before. So slow down, make the movement, like unrack the bar, walk back, and see what this feels like. Try to regulate your breathing while you're doing that. Just try to regulate it, try to bring it under control. This is very important. It will help you when you eventually go and squat the weight. I guarantee you, if you follow these three things that we talked about, consistency, progressively overloading at all times, and if you won't follow a 5x5 program or a powerlifting program, you will get where you want to get. It might not be 4 plates necessarily, but you will see some crazy breakthroughs on your squats, and you're going to be like, whoa, I never saw this coming, but here it is. So, have you seen many people squat 4 plates? Share your experience in the comments. It's always very, very, very helpful to everyone. So, guys, that was the video. One more video on this very, very interesting playlist, in my opinion. I do like making those videos. We had a few technical issues before. I hope they're fixed now. They should be. But if they're not, if you have any issues with the audio again, do let me know in the comments. I'll make sure to fix those. But I think it's all right now. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you guys learned something from it. And as always, do leave a like if you enjoyed it. And if you have anything to share with the rest of us, any tips, tricks, or advice that helped you improve your squat, let us know in the comments. It doesn't just help me and the channel, but it helps the people who potentially are going through the comments and they're like, oh, that's a good advice. And they're going to remember this one person who wrote that comment and they're going to be like, this guy changed my life or improved my squats. But you know what I mean. Like, look, if you have a better squat, you have a better life. Everybody knows this. But in all seriousness, if you like this type of content, please let me know. Subscribe to the channel to help me out. There's plenty of content coming every single day. And if you want to learn more about these advanced tips and tricks, I have plenty more on the ebook. You can find the ebook down in the description. You can go to the website. There's a little bit of a taste for you to kind of like go through it, see what's in it. And if you like it, you can of course buy it. It will support me very, very, very much. Till next time, peace, and I am out.